Commander Jake Morrison stood by the big window of his spaceship, the UES Horizon. Outside, he could see dozens of alien ships coming together around a huge crystal building floating in space. This was the Galactic Assembly, where all the different alien races met to talk about important things. For 300 years, humans had been the new kids in this cosmic neighborhood. They always tried hard to prove they belonged here. They wanted the older, more powerful alien races to accept them and treat them as equals. The galaxy was full of different species, and each one had their own special powers and territories. The Zephyrians were strange beings who could talk to each other with their minds across vast distances. They controlled the eastern part of the galaxy with their telepathic networks. The Corvani Empire was made up of big insect-like creatures who were amazing at mining. They had turned entire planets into giant factories and controlled 17 star systems. Then there were the Ethereals, ancient beings made of pure energy, who claimed they invented dimensional travel. They could move between different realities and thought this made them the most important species in the galaxy. Every alien race had found their special skill and used it to claim their place in the cosmic order. Captain Lisa Brooks walked up to Morrison carrying a tablet full of information. She was his second in command and one of the smartest officers on the ship. "Sir, something big is happening at the assembly. They're asking every species to declare their stellar mandate. Basically, they want everyone to say which parts of space they have the right to control." Morrison took the tablet and read through the reports. Every major alien species was making bold claims about territory. The Thraxians, who looked like giant lizards with multiple arms, wanted exclusive rights to all red giant star systems. They said their biology was perfectly suited for the radiation from these types of stars. The Mollusk Confederation claimed every planet with oceans within 50 light-years of their homeworld. Even smaller, less powerful species were making territorial demands based on old treaties and what they thought were their natural strengths. What about humanity? Morrison asked, though he had a bad feeling about the answer. "We weren't invited at first," Brooks said with a frown. "But Ambassador Karen White worked really hard and managed to get us a speaking slot. The problem is we go last. After all, the big, powerful species have already said their piece." The first day of the assembly was like a big show-off contest. Each alien species tried to prove they deserved to control large parts of the galaxy. The Zephyrians demonstrated their mental powers by controlling entire fleets of ships just with their thoughts. Hundreds of spacecraft moved in perfect formation without any radio communication, guided only by telepathic commands from their leaders. The Corvani showed holographic movies of their industrial might. The images displayed entire planets that had been converted into massive manufacturing centers. Billions of insect-like workers operated machines that could build starships in hours instead of months. Their presentation made it clear they could outfit armies faster than any other species. One by one, species after species came forward to present their case for cosmic dominance. Some relied on military strength, showing off their biggest warships and most powerful weapons. Others focused on economic power, displaying their vast trade networks and resource stockpiles. A few emphasized their technological superiority, demonstrating inventions that other species could barely understand. The human delegation sat quietly in the observers section. Ambassador White, Dr. Ryan Clark, and their small team took careful notes but said very little. When alien reporters approached them with questions, they just smiled politely and said they were learning a lot from the presentations. As the day went on, it became obvious that the assembly was heading toward a massive fight. Many of the territorial claims overlapped. The space that one species claimed as rightfully theirs was also being claimed by 2 or 3 other species. Tempers started to flare as representatives argued about who had the better claim to disputed star systems. The Crystalline Collective, beings made of living rock and metal, got into a heated argument with the Void Walkers, who were strange creatures that lived in the empty space between stars. Both species claimed the right to control dark matter regions of the galaxy. Their argument grew so intense that security guards had to step between them. Several smaller species became so frustrated with the overlapping claims that they threatened to leave the galactic community entirely. They said they would rather expand their territories through war than accept reduced influence through negotiation. Through all of this chaos and arguing, the human delegation remained calm and quiet. They watched everything with interest but didn't seem worried or upset. This strange behavior started to attract attention from other species. Alien news networks began to speculate about why the humans seemed so confident. Some reporters suggested that humanity must be planning to make a surprise claim to vast territories. Others wondered if the humans had discovered some cosmic threat that made all the territorial disputes seem unimportant. By the end of the first day, the assembly hall was filled with tension and confusion. Delegates from different species glared at each other across the room. Old grudges and historical conflicts were starting to surface as species accused each other of past violations and broken promises. The Consensus Prime, an ancient artificial intelligence that served as the assembly's moderator, tried to maintain order. But even this powerful being seemed overwhelmed by the scale of the conflicts that were emerging. Ambassador White gathered her small team together as they returned to their quarters on the human ship. "Tomorrow will be even more challenging," she told them quietly. "But we stick to our plan. We observe, we learn, and we wait for the right moment." Dr. Clark, humanities expert on alien behavior, nodded thoughtfully. "The patterns are becoming clear. Each species is so focused on what they want that they can't see the bigger picture. They don't realize how much they depend on each other." Captain Brooks checked the latest intelligence reports from their monitoring stations. Several alien fleets are already moving toward disputed territories. "If this continues, we could see actual fighting break out before the assembly even finishes." Morrison looked out at the alien ships surrounding them. Each one represented a species with thousands of years of history, amazing technologies, and legitimate claims to cosmic importance. But somehow, in all their power and wisdom, they were creating a situation that could destroy the peace they had all worked so hard to build. "Whatever happens next," he said quietly, "humanity needs to be ready to offer something different. Something these species haven't considered yet." Dr. Ryan Clark spent the second day walking through the corridors of the assembly building, having quiet conversations with different alien delegates. As humanity's chief expert on alien behavior, he asked questions that seemed simple and innocent. He wanted to know how different species communicated with each other, how they made important decisions, and how their societies were organized. But something strange happened after each conversation. The alien representatives felt uncomfortable, though they couldn't explain why. Dr. Clark's questions made them think about things they had never really considered before. His gentle manner and curious smile left them feeling like they had revealed more than they intended. The Corvani delegate was a massive insect-like creature called Hive Speaker Zix. During a break between assembly sessions, this imposing alien cornered Dr. Clark in one of the side hallways. The creature's multiple eyes focused intently on the human scientist. "Your species confuses us, human," Hive Speaker Zix said, his voice making a buzzing sound that came from vibrating wing membranes. "Your technology is decent but nothing special. Your military is competent but small compared to ours. Your economic output is modest next to the established galactic powers. Yet your ambassador sits in those meetings with the confidence of someone who holds all the best cards in a game. What do you know that we don't?" Dr. Clark's response was calm and thoughtful. "We know that the galaxy is much bigger and more complicated than any single species can understand by themselves. We also know that real strength isn't always about who can make the most noise or show off the biggest weapons." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Sam Hughes was working in the human delegation's private quarters, studying data on his computer screens. As humanity's top strategic analyst, he was creating detailed maps of all the relationships between different alien species. He tracked their alliances, their dependencies, and their weaknesses. "Ma'am," he reported to Ambassador White, "the more I study these territorial claims, the more problems I see. The Zephyrians' telepathic networks need relay stations that they built in 17 different species' territories. If those species decided to kick them out, their whole communication system would collapse." He pulled up more data on his screens. "The Corvani mining operations need rare elements that only exist in star systems claimed by their political enemies. The Ethereal's dimensional gates require special energy sources that are controlled by species they've never even bothered to meet or talk to." Ambassador White nodded as she listened to his analysis. "And they're all so focused on their own demands that they can't see how connected everything really is." The second day's presentations at the assembly were even more heated than the first day. The Crystalline Collective, beings made of living silicon and metal, claimed all planets rich in minerals based on their unique biology. They argued that since they were made of the same materials as these worlds, They had a natural right to control them. The Voidwalkers, mysterious creatures that lived in the empty space between stars, demanded exclusive rights to patrol and control all dark matter regions. They said their ability to survive in the vacuum of space made them the only species qualified to manage these areas. As each species made their claims, ancient grudges began to surface. The Mollusk Confederation accused the Thraxians of violating old treaties by expanding into disputed water worlds. The Ethereals claimed that several younger species were using dimensional technology stolen from their ancestors. Throughout all of this arguing and posturing, the human delegation maintained their quiet observation. They asked occasional questions to clarify details, but they never made any territorial claims of their own. This strange behavior was starting to make other species very curious and suspicious. Several alien news networks began running special reports about humanity's mysterious confidence. Some reporters speculated that the humans had discovered a terrible cosmic threat that made all territorial disputes seem unimportant. Others suggested that humanity was planning to make a massive surprise claim that would shock the entire galaxy. Captain Jenny Adams, commanding the UES Destiny and the human fleet, spent her time monitoring communications between the various alien ships. Her translation computers worked constantly to decode the messages flowing between different species' fleets. The aliens are getting really frustrated with our behavior, she reported to Morrison during their evening briefing. Some species think we're planning to claim huge territories and just haven't revealed our hand yet. Others worry that we know something they don't about some kind of cosmic disaster. The intercepted messages revealed growing tension among the alien fleets. Several species had started moving warships toward disputed territories, preparing for the possibility that negotiations would fail completely. Military commanders were drawing up battle plans and requesting permission to use force if necessary. Dr. Michelle Torres, humanities expert in resolving conflicts between different groups, had been carefully documenting every disagreement and contradiction in the territorial claims. Her computers ran complex analyses of all the overlapping demands and competing interests. "Ambassador," she reported to White during a private meeting, "I've been tracking all the disputes and the numbers are staggering. We now have 847 direct territorial conflicts where two or more species claim the same space. There are 203 resource disputes over mining rights and energy sources, and we have 2,891 cases where species claims overlap in ways that would make normal governance impossible." She showed White a holographic display of the galaxy with all the disputed areas marked in red. Nearly every star system had multiple overlapping claims. If all these demands were somehow granted, the galaxy would essentially be divided into millions of tiny contested zones with no clear authority anywhere. The Assembly's moderator, the ancient artificial intelligence called Consensus Prime, tried repeatedly to establish some kind of system for resolving the conflicts, but every solution it proposed created new problems. When it suggested using historical precedent to settle disputes, species argued about which historical claims were valid. When it proposed dividing territories based on technological capability, species argued about how to measure and compare different types of technology. As the second day came to an end, the situation was getting worse instead of better. Temporary alliances formed between species who shared common enemies, only to break apart when those allies discovered their own interests conflicted. The careful diplomatic protocols that had maintained galactic peace for centuries were starting to break down. Commander Pete Johnson, monitoring the situation from humanity's flagship, observed an even more troubling development. The language being used in these debates is escalating beyond simple territorial disputes, he reported. Multiple species are now questioning whether the galactic community should exist at all. Some are openly threatening to withdraw entirely and pursue expansion through military conquest rather than negotiation. Late that evening, several alien delegates directly confronted the human delegation. Hive Speaker Zix led a group of frustrated representatives who surrounded Ambassador White as she walked back to the human quarters. "Enough games. Human," the Corvani delegate said angrily, his buzzing voice filled with irritation. "Every species has declared what they want except yours. We have shown our fleets, our technologies, our historical claims. You sit silent while the galaxy tears itself apart with competing demands. What gives you the right to stay above this process? What makes you think you can judge our claims without presenting your own?" Ambassador White looked calmly at the group of alien representatives surrounding her. Her voice remained steady and respectful. "We're not judging anyone's claims. We're simply observing how the galaxy's most advanced civilizations handle the question of cosmic authority. It's been quite educational." The response only made the aliens more frustrated and suspicious about humanity's true intentions. On the third day, the territorial claims that had seemed so impressive began to fall apart under their own contradictions. The problems that Lieutenant Commander Hughes had predicted started to become obvious to everyone in the assembly. The Zephyrians' demand for complete control of the Kepler sector ran into a major problem. The Mollusk Confederation had claimed all worlds with significant water bodies, and 17 planets in the Kepler sector had vast oceans covering most of their surfaces. Neither species was willing to compromise, and both had valid arguments for their claims. The Corvani's mining rights created even bigger conflicts. Their industrial operations required rare elements that existed in 43 different star systems. But the Crystalline Collective had claimed those same systems based on their biological need for mineral-rich environments. Both species had built their entire civilizations around accessing these resources. Dr. Michelle Torres had been working through the night, using advanced computers to map every territorial dispute and contradiction. Her analysis painted a disturbing picture of the galaxy's future, if the current claims were honored. "Ambassador," she reported to White during the morning briefing, "the numbers keep getting worse. We now have 847 direct territorial conflicts where multiple species claim the same space. There are 1,203 resource disputes over essential materials. And we have 2,891 overlapping claims that would create legal and practical nightmares." She activated a three-dimensional holographic display of the galaxy. Red zones marked every area of conflict. If this continues, the galaxy will essentially be divided into millions of contested zones. There would be no clear authority anywhere. No species would be able to function normally because they'd constantly be fighting over jurisdiction. The Assembly's moderator, Consensus Prime, had spent 2 days trying to establish priority systems for resolving conflicts. The ancient artificial intelligence proposed using various criteria to determine which claims should take precedence. But every solution created new disputes. When Consensus Prime suggested that older civilizations should have priority, younger species protested that this was unfair discrimination. When it proposed that technological advancement should determine territorial rights, less developed species argued this would create permanent inequality. When it suggested dividing territories based on population needs, species with different biology couldn't agree on how to measure those needs. Commander Pete Johnson had been monitoring the situation from the human fleet, and he noticed something even more troubling developing. The frustrated delegates weren't just arguing about territory anymore. They were starting to question the mere, fundamental principles that held the galactic community together. "The rhetoric is escalating beyond simple territorial disputes," he reported to Morrison. "Multiple species are now saying the galactic community was a mistake from the beginning. Some are threatening to withdraw entirely and pursue expansion through military force rather than negotiation." The Thraxians, large reptilian beings with multiple arms, had become particularly aggressive in their statements. Their delegates stood up during one session and declared that their species had been weakened by centuries of diplomatic compromise. "We should have conquered these territories when we had the chance," the Thraxian representative hissed. "Negotiation only favors species too weak to take what they deserve." This kind of language was spreading to other species. The Void Walkers, normally peaceful creatures, began talking about their natural right to control dark matter regions through force if necessary. Even smaller species started making threatening statements about their willingness to fight for their territorial claims. As tensions reached a critical point, several alien delegates decided to directly confront the human delegation. They had grown frustrated with humanity's mysterious silence and wanted answers. Hive Speaker Zix led a group of representatives from 6 different species. They surrounded Ambassador White during the evening recess, their various forms of alien biology creating an intimidating display. The Corvani's insect-like appearance, the Crystalline Collective's metallic features, and the Ethereal's energy-based form all focused on the small human woman. "Enough games, human," Hive Speaker Zix buzzed angrily, his multiple eyes glowing with frustration. "Every species has declared their cosmic mandate except yours. We have shown our fleets, our technologies, our historical rights to these territories. You sit silent while the galaxy tears itself apart with competing claims." The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with what seemed like irritation. "Your species' silence borders on contempt for this entire process. If you believe you have some superior claim to cosmic authority, present it now. If not, stop pretending to possess wisdom you do not have." Other delegates joined in the confrontation. The Mollusk Confederation's representative, a large aquatic being in a mobile water tank, expressed frustration through rapid color changes in its skin. The Crystalline Collective's delegate resonated with harmonic vibrations that translated as accusations of arrogance. "What gives you the right to remain above this process?" demanded the Thraxian representative, its multiple arms gesturing aggressively. "What makes you think you can judge our claims without presenting your own? Your technology is adequate but not exceptional. Your military is competent but small. Your economic output is modest compared to established powers." The alien delegates pressed closer, their frustration boiling over into anger. "Yet your ambassador observes our proceedings with the confidence of someone holding superior cards," continued Hive Speaker Zix. "What do you know that we do not? What secret gives you this arrogance?" Ambassador White remained calm throughout the confrontation. She looked at each alien representative with genuine respect and understanding. Her small human form seemed fragile compared to the various alien biologies surrounding her, but her voice remained steady and clear. "We're not judging anyone's claims," she said quietly. "We're simply observing how the galaxy's most advanced civilizations handle the question of cosmic authority. It's been quite educational to watch such powerful species work through these important issues." This response only made the aliens more frustrated. They had expected either aggressive territorial claims or submissive acceptance of their superiority. Instead, they got calm observation and polite interest. "Educational?" The ethereal representative pulsed with increased energy. "You treat our legitimate territorial disputes like some kind of academic exercise? These claims represent the survival and prosperity of entire civilizations spanning thousands of years." Ambassador White exchanged glances with Dr. Clark, Lieutenant Commander Hughes, and the rest of her small team. She could see in their faces that they were ready for what came next, the moment they had been preparing for throughout the assembly. She nodded slowly, making a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Very well. You're right that humanity has remained silent long enough. Tomorrow we will present our answer to the question of who commands the stars." The alien delegates stepped back, surprised by this sudden agreement. They had expected continued resistance or further delays. Now they weren't sure if they should be pleased that humanity would finally make their territorial claims, or worried about what those claims might be. "Finally," muttered Hive Speaker Zix, "tomorrow we will see what cards the humans have been hiding." But as the alien delegates dispersed to their respective quarters, none of them could shake the feeling that humanity's presentation would be unlike anything they had seen before. There was something in Ambassador White's calm confidence that suggested the humans understood something about cosmic authority that had escaped every other species in the galaxy. The third day ended with the galaxy balanced on the edge of chaos. Territorial disputes had created an impossible tangle of conflicts. Ancient alliances were breaking down. Species that had cooperated for centuries were preparing for war. And in the middle of it all, humanity prepared to reveal their cosmic mandate. The fourth day began with something that had never happened before in galactic history. Every seat in the assembly hall was filled. Observers packed the viewing galleries. Millions more watched through various communication networks that connected species across the galaxy. Word had spread quickly through alien news services that humanity would finally reveal their cosmic mandate. After 3 days of mysterious silence, the newest species in the galactic community was ready to make their territorial claims. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward in anticipation, wondering what humanity had been hiding. Ambassador White walked slowly to the central podium, her small human form dwarfed by the massive crystalline structure of the assembly hall. Behind her, huge holographic displays activated, showing detailed star maps of the galaxy. But unlike the presentations from other species, these displays remained blank. No highlighted regions marked human territorial claims. No red zones showed areas of strategic interest. The alien delegates shifted restlessly in their seats. They had expected to see impressive displays of military might or detailed plans for territorial expansion. Instead, they saw empty star maps and a single human woman standing quietly at the podium. "Honored delegates," Ambassador White began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustic systems. "You have asked the question, who commands the stars? Over the past 3 days, each species has presented impressive displays of military might, economic power, and technological advancement. You've made claims based on history, biology, strategic advantage, and what you believe are your natural rights." She paused, letting her words settle across the assembly hall. Thousands of alien eyes, optical sensors, and energy patterns focused on her with intense attention. "But in all these presentations, I've noticed something curious," White continued. "Not one species has asked the stars what they want." A murmur of confusion rippled through the assembly. The sound was strange, mixing the buzzing of Corvani wing membranes, the harmonic resonance of crystalline beings, and the energy fluctuations of ethereals. Different species expressed confusion in their own unique ways, but the emotion was universal. Hive speaker Zix's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Stars are not sentient beings, human. They cannot want anything. They are nuclear furnaces burning in space, nothing more." "Can't they?" White asked, turning to look directly at the Corvani delegate. "Commander Morrison, please share our recent discoveries with the Assembly." Morrison stepped forward, his uniform crisp and his expression serious. He activated the holographic displays, but instead of showing territorial claims, the images revealed something completely different. Complex patterns of stellar behavior appeared across the galaxy map. Streams of energy flowed between star systems. Gravitational fields created invisible connections spanning thousands of light years. "For the past 50 years," Morrison explained, "humanity has been conducting a comprehensive study of stellar mechanics, gravitational interactions, and cosmic evolution. What we discovered challenges every assumption about cosmic authority that we've heard in this assembly." The displays showed intricate networks of relationships between star systems. The gravity of distant suns influenced solar activity and their neighbors. The movement of cosmic dust affected the formation of new planets across vast distances. Streams of charged particles created invisible highways connecting different regions of the galaxy. Dr. Clark moved to stand beside Morrison, his scientific expertise evident in his calm, methodical presentation style. "Every star exists in a complex web of relationships with every other star in the galaxy. The gravitational pull of distant systems influences the solar flares and magnetic fields of their neighbors. The death of one star creates the materials needed for new planets around other stars." He gestured to the holographic displays, which now showed the flow of cosmic materials through space. What we call empty space is actually filled with invisible connections that bind the galaxy together. Magnetic fields stretch across light years. Gravitational waves carry information between distant systems. The galaxy itself is like a single vast organism, where every star plays a crucial role. Captain Brooks joined the presentation, her expertise in stellar navigation adding another layer to humanity's revelations. "More importantly, we discovered that the galaxy is constantly evolving. Star formation patterns are shifting in response to cosmic forces. New gravitational currents develop as older stars die and are replaced by younger ones. The galaxy's spiral structure is constantly changing, adapting, growing." The alien delegates listened with growing amazement and confusion. They had never considered the galaxy as a living system. To them, space was empty territory to be claimed and controlled. Stars were resources to be exploited or obstacles to be avoided. The idea that the galaxy might have its own patterns and purposes was completely foreign to their thinking. "Ambassador." White returned to the central podium as the holographic displays continued to show the galaxy's hidden connections. "So when you ask who commands the stars, we must first ask, do the stars need commanding? Or do they already know exactly what they're doing?" The assembly hall fell completely silent. The usual background noise of breathing, energy fluctuations, and mechanical systems seemed to disappear. Thousands of alien minds struggled to process the implications of what they were hearing. Every territorial claim presented in this assembly assumes that cosmic authority comes from the ability to impose control, White continued, her voice gentle but clear. But what if true cosmic authority comes from understanding that the galaxy doesn't need our control? What if the highest form of leadership is recognizing when not to lead? The silence stretched on until the ethereal representative finally found the ability to respond. The being of pure energy pulsed with what might have been confusion or frustration. You speak in riddles, human. The galaxy requires order, structure, authority. Without governance, there is chaos and conflict. Is there? White asked, turning to face the ethereal directly. Commander Hughes, please share your analysis of the current territorial disputes. Hughes activated a new set of displays, showing the interconnected nature of every species' territorial claims. Complex diagrams revealed how each demand depended on cooperation from rival species. Red lines marked conflicts, but green lines showed dependencies that made those conflicts ultimately meaningless. If every territorial demand presented in this assembly were somehow granted, the result wouldn't be order, Hughes explained. It would be complete gridlock. No species could function without resources controlled by their supposed rivals. No territory could be defended without alliances with competing claimants. Dr. Torres stepped forward to add her analysis of the social and economic connections between species. But there's another pattern hidden in all this data. Despite these territorial disputes, galactic civilization has functioned successfully for thousands of years. Trade flows between systems regardless of who claims authority over them. Scientific knowledge spreads across species boundaries. Cultural exchange happens whether governments approve or not. Her displays showed the real networks that connected galactic civilization. Trade routes that ignored political boundaries. Communication channels that linked scientists from different species. Cultural exchanges that happened naturally between neighboring worlds. The galaxy, Ambassador White said quietly, her words carrying across the silent assembly hall, already has a command structure. It's not based on military dominance or economic control. It's based on mutual dependence, shared necessity, and the simple reality that no single species can survive alone in the cosmic darkness. The crystalline collective's representative, a being of living crystal that communicated through harmonic vibrations, resonated with what sounded like deep confusion. The harmonics translated roughly as, then what is humanity's territorial claim? What regions do you demand for your species? Ambassador White smiled, and for the first time since the assembly began, her expression showed complete peace and confidence. We claim nothing. We demand nothing. We command nothing. The hall exploded in confusion. Delegates from dozens of species began talking at once, their various forms of communication creating a chaotic symphony of sounds, lights, and energy fluctuations. How could a species present no territorial claims? How could they assert authority by denying authority? What kind of cosmic mandate involved claiming no territory at all? Silence! Commanded Consensus Prime, the ancient artificial intelligence that moderated the assembly. Gradually, the hall quieted, though tension and confusion filled the air. Human Ambassador, your species' position requires clarification. Explain your cosmic mandate in terms the assembly can understand. White looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and energy patterns of representatives from across the galaxy. In that moment, she represented not just humanity but a completely different way of thinking about cosmic authority and leadership. Our position is simple, she said, her voice carrying absolute conviction. We believe the question who commands the stars is based on a false premise. The stars don't need commanding. The galaxy doesn't need ruling. What it needs is tending, like a garden needs gardening. Ambassador White's words about tending the galaxy like a garden hung in the air, as thousands of alien minds tried to understand what humanity really meant. The assembly hall remained silent, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Instead of confusion or anger, there was a growing sense of something important happening. The ethereal representative was the first to break the silence. The being of pure energy pulsed with patterns that suggested deep thought. You speak of the galaxy as if it were a living thing that grows naturally. But civilizations require structure, laws, boundaries. Without clear authority, there is only chaos and conflict. Is there really? Ambassador White asked gently. She gestured to Commander Hughes, who activated new displays showing detailed analysis of the territorial disputes that had dominated the assembly for 3 days. Hughes stepped forward, his strategic mind having worked through all the implications of the competing claims. If every territorial demand presented in this assembly were granted, the result wouldn't be the order you're seeking. It would be complete paralysis. Look at the real connections. The holographic displays showed a web of dependencies that made the territorial claims meaningless. The Zephyrians' telepathic networks required relay stations built in systems claimed by 17 different species. If those species decided to deny access, the Zephyrian communication system would collapse within days. The Corvani mining operations need rare elements that only exist in star systems claimed by your political rivals, Hughes continued, highlighting the connections on his displays. The Ethereal's dimensional gates are powered by energy sources controlled by species you've never even bothered to negotiate with. Dr. Torres moved to stand beside Hughes, her expertise in conflict resolution, adding depth to the analysis. But there's something even more important in these patterns. Despite all these territorial disputes and overlapping claims, galactic civilization has actually functioned remarkably well for thousands of years. Her displays showed the real networks that kept galactic society running. Trade routes ignored political boundaries, carrying essential goods between species that claimed to be enemies. Scientific research was shared freely between universities on different worlds. Cultural exchanges happened naturally between neighboring systems. Trade flows between systems regardless of who claims authority over the space lanes, Torres explained. Scientific knowledge spreads across species boundaries because researchers care more about discovery than politics. Cultural exchange happens whether governments approve or not, because people are naturally curious about their neighbors. Ambassador White returned to the center of the podium, her presence somehow commanding despite her small human form. The galaxy already has a command structure. It's not based on military dominance or economic control. It's based on mutual dependence, shared necessity, and the simple reality that no single species can survive alone in the darkness of space. The crystalline collective's representative resonated with harmonic vibrations that conveyed deep confusion. The sounds translated roughly as a question. Then what does humanity claim? What territory do you demand? What gives you the right to cosmic authority? White's smile was peaceful and confident. We claim nothing. We demand nothing. We command nothing. The hall erupted again in confusion, but this time the noise was different. Instead of angry arguing, there was a mixture of amazement, bewilderment, and growing understanding. Representatives turned to each other, trying to process what they had just heard. Silence, Consensus Prime commanded, and gradually the assembly quieted. Human Ambassador, explain your species' cosmic mandate clearly. How can you claim authority while claiming no territory? White looked around the assembly, her eyes meeting the various optical sensors and energy patterns of representatives from across the galaxy. Our cosmic mandate is to serve as gardeners, not rulers, to nurture the connections that already exist rather than imposing new hierarchies, to remain silent when silence serves the greater harmony. She gestured to the holographic displays still showing the galaxy's interconnected systems. Humanity's role is to tend the garden of galactic civilization, to help species see the connections they've forgotten, to step back when stepping back allows others to find their own solutions. At that moment, Captain Johnson's voice came through the communication system from the human fleet orbiting outside the assembly structure. Ambassador, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Something remarkable is happening. The reports flooded in through various communication channels. The territorial disputes that had seemed impossible to resolve just hours before were suddenly finding solutions. Species were discovering compromises they hadn't seen before. The Zephyrians and Mollusk Confederation just announced a joint administration agreement for the Kepler sector, Johnson reported, his voice filled with amazement. They're sharing the star systems instead of fighting over them. More reports followed in rapid succession. The Corvani and Crystalline Collective had agreed to cooperative mining operations that would benefit both species' unique biology. Ancient enemies were discovering mutual dependencies they had never acknowledged. Species that had threatened war were now discussing trade agreements. Hive Speaker Zix stood up slowly, his multiple eyes focusing on the human delegation with something approaching wonder. The humans knew this would happen, he said, his buzzing voice filled with realization. They knew that by refusing to make territorial claims, They would force us to confront the contradictions in our own demands. The Corvani delegate's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he processed this revelation. They didn't command us through military force or economic pressure. They didn't argue with our logic or challenge our historical claims. They simply stepped back and let us see clearly for the first time in centuries. The ethereal representative pulsed with energy patterns that suggested something like respect. Their silence wasn't empty or arrogant. It was full of understanding. They commanded the assembly not through words or weapons, but through the wisdom of knowing when not to speak. Around the assembly hall, representatives from dozens of species began to understand what had really happened. Humanity hadn't been hiding some terrible secret or planning massive territorial claims. They had been waiting patiently for the other species to recognize what the humans had seen from the beginning. The galaxy was already perfectly organized. The connections between different species, the dependencies that made territorial claims meaningless, the natural flow of trade and communication across political boundaries, all of it worked because it had evolved naturally over thousands of years. The Thraxian representative, who had been among the most aggressive in demanding territory, stood up with something like embarrassment in his multiple eyes. We have been trying to impose order on a system that was already more orderly than anything we could create through force or law. The Voidwalkers delegate, who had claimed exclusive rights to dark matter regions, resonated with sounds that translated as wonder. The humans saw that our territorial disputes were like trying to own the wind or claim possession of gravity. The galaxy belongs to itself. As the assembly session moved toward its conclusion, something unprecedented began to happen. Instead of challenging humanity's authority or demanding territorial concessions, species after species approached the human delegation with requests for help. The Mollusk Confederation wanted human advisors to help mediate their ancient dispute with the crystalline, collective over ocean worlds. The Corvani requested human observers to help them establish fair trade agreements with species they had exploited in the past. Even the proud ethereals asked for human guidance in understanding the natural networks that connected dimensional space. Ambassador White accepted each request with gracious humility. "We would be honored to serve as gardeners of galactic harmony," she told each delegation. "But remember, the garden tends itself. Our role is simply to help remove the weeds that prevent natural growth." The final session of the assembly concluded with something that had never happened before in galactic history. Instead of territorial claims and competing demands, the session ended with a unanimous agreement to study the natural networks that connected all species. Consensus Prime, the ancient artificial intelligence that had moderated thousands of territorial disputes, made an unprecedented statement. This assembly recognizes humanity's unique contribution to galactic civilization. Through the wisdom of silence, they have commanded respect and achieved authority without claiming power. As the various alien fleets prepared to return to their home systems, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The question who commands the stars had been answered, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity commanded the stars by choosing not to command them. Their authority came not from the power to impose their will, but from the wisdom to recognize when stepping back allowed others to find their own path to the light. The territorial disputes that had threatened to tear the galaxy apart had been transformed into opportunities for cooperation. Ancient enemies had become trading partners. Competing claims had become shared responsibilities. In the end, the galaxy had learned that true leadership sometimes means